Hey guys, welcome to the Women Going Big podcast. It's Krista, your host, and I'm super excited today. It's Friday, first of all, which it's always a good day on a Friday. And I'm technically recording the first episode of Women Going Big after starting over. So this is a new category for season 2 of Women Going Big. And I'm really excited to have Maggie with me today. She's the owner of Joyful Boss Mamas, and she is a holistic life coach for boss mamas who are looking to live more joyfully. I'm really excited, and I'm going to be 100% honest with my listeners. If you don't know, I'm not a mother. So having a mother on the show it's not new, but she's definitely going to be the expert on this topic, and it's not going to be the only thing we talk about, but I thought I should be totally honest with my listeners that you've got the hand up in the conversation today. So Maggie, go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Yeah. So again, my name is Maggie Conrad. Joyful Boss Mamas has come about, after a big transition in my life. A lot of people are experiencing the same after COVID, and my job closed down at the end of May, and I was kind of left with, what do I do now? So there was quite a bit of upheaval and transition in my life. And I also, was working with a business coach, and I rely on my intuition a lot. It's guided me very well throughout my life. And this is where it brought me. And it was not even like on my radar that this was what I was going to be doing with my life. And, it just shows the power of what can happen when you remain open and available to that guidance. And it's been so much fun already. And, it's really great to be able to have something that I'm passionate about and that I'm good at, and that, I'm a joyful boss mama. That's who I am. That's how I live my life. I live it around being joyful and creating joy and running a business and being a mom. So, that's why I serve that community, because that's who I am. So I'm excited to be here and share that with you all.
Awesome. Well, that was a good intro. And there's a couple things that I want to touch on just kind of right off the bat, because I think I want to say like the elephant in the room is COVID, because so many people are having these feelings of like uncertainty and just like I want to call it like inner stress. Yeah. And they don't know why. They can't put their finger on it, like why they're depressed or, why they're moody or anything like that. And I've been telling people, I'm like, it's not you. Literally you and a million other people are going through the same thing. And it's like when your environment is in a state of complete chaos, it affects you.
It's not even just our environment. It's the collective consciousness, especially as people who are empathic, which a lot of entrepreneurs are, and a lot of women are naturally. We feel everything that's going on around us, and we feel the collective anxiety and the collective fear and the collective sadness, because even if say that your job wasn't affected during COVID and, but you're still feeling this way, it's because there's so much out in there in the world that we're, picking up. And a huge, I fell prey to it in the beginning as well. And a huge part of it for me of healing and coming kind of out on the other side and, be feeling happy and joyful again was realizing that, it wasn't all mine. Right. And recognizing kind of where that line is versus what is mine that it needs to heal and what is other people's that I can either hold space for or I can release, And then the other part was, it's a really scary time. Everything that we know is changing, globally. And, we're all having to kind of pivot into living this new new lifestyle and this new way. And I think the one thing that helped me kind of overcome the sadness of it all was this fundamental belief that humanity is always progressing towards authenticity and goodness and, you know, love and light. Like, if you look at the history of humans, you know, and like where we were 100 years ago, where we were a couple, you know, thousands of years ago, you know, we are in a progression forward. Always.
Yeah.
And yes, there are steps back, and yes, there are times when it's really dark in the moment, but you know, we may not see the fullness of it in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But we are going in the right direction. And I think if we can remain open to that and like hopeful in that, you know, that this can be a very beautiful transformation. You know, so many wonderful things have come out of it. Like, you know, people connecting in new and different ways. Like, you know, all of these like Zoom meetings that we have online has opened up like a whole new online community. And, you know, finding ways to connect with our community around us, and like, you know, people focusing on small businesses and supporting other businesses around them, and supporting people that, you know, have things to sell or services to offer versus, you know, large companies that obviously don't care about us.
Yeah. And I think that's important to remember. And there's a couple of things in there that I want to pull out and focus on. So first you mentioned kind of the pivot, like not letting it consume you and pivoting back out of that and focusing on the things that you know that you can control. And then you said leaving space or releasing it for other people. And I think that takes a lot of strength and just like a lot of inner power to be able to recognize, okay, like this is what I can fix, not necessarily fix, but this is what I can recognize in myself and work on. And then this is other people's stuff. And I know I struggle with that. Like you, I mean, so I kind of lost my job. I got furloughed. So I went through, honestly, like a bout of depression, you know, when COVID hit, and it was tough to get out of. And I've been an entrepreneur for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. So I'm not unfamiliar with the ups and downs of it. But I think learning how to harness, you know, what's right in front of you and being able to pivot back out of it and onto something else is super important. But what I'd like you to touch on is what that exact moment for you looked like, where you were like, okay, like where I'm at right now isn't working. Like I need to do something more. What did that moment look like for you?
That's a great question. You know, I think I can remember the moment where the realization came to me and where it just kind of felt like, you know, the weight was lifted off of my shoulders, but there obviously were things that led up to that moment as well. And I think that just kind of goes back to like the healing that I've done over the last 20 years and the transformations that I've had, you know, throughout my life, you know, with generational trauma and abuse and narcissistic relationships and disability and like all of these things that I've had to already navigate through kind of gave me a foundation. And so, you know, in the beginning, I allowed myself to wallow a bit, you know, and I allowed myself just to feel the things that I needed to feel and give myself that time and the space to grieve and to, you know, get angry and to like let the whole spectrum, you know, come through, and including joy. And, you know, I still had fun with my son. And then it got to a point where I realized like, okay, now I'm just wallowing. Now I'm over wallowing. You know, I'm like, I noticed this feeling of stuckness, you know, like at first it feels good to feel all the feelings. And then you start to feel like it's weighing you down. And it's that feeling of weight that I recognize. And I realize like, okay, I need to start getting myself out of this. And so a lot of it is mindset work of just focusing on the positive, finding the silver linings, not allowing myself to consume every news article that's written about COVID. and creating boundaries around what I'm allowing myself to, bring into my world, and kind of slowly taking those mindset shifts created the space for me to have that realization, like I said earlier, that, we're going to be okay. Humanity is going to be okay. This is a dark time and it's really hard and it's really difficult, but I believe in us as a people and in the goodness of us and our ability to overcome. Once like I had that like aha moment, it was just like the clouds opened up and the rainbow shone and, the weight was lifted. And then I was just like, okay, I'm good, And there's still definitely been work around it, but it was a pivotal moment of recognizing that, yes, we're in the shit of it right now. Pardon my language, but
no, it's okay.
We're going to be okay. We're all going to be okay in the end. And, and I trust in that. And I trust in the universe, guidance for us and its desire for us to be happy. And that was a huge turning point for me, that allowed me to start really just enjoying my time and my time at home with my son and, my ability to start something new and all of the things that have come out of it,
That's awesome. And then just kind of pivoting in the conversation, I was reading kind of your why, and you mentioned that when you were looking at your options of, like where to start your business, first of all, I have to ask, like, do you have a history of entrepreneurship, or was this something that came about because of the circumstances with losing your job?
Yeah, so it's a bit of both. My first job was actually as a massage therapist, and I quickly went into business for myself. And, I was a massage therapist and an energy worker, and I had built up a clientele over the years, and I rented a room, and I was like, and that was my first like kind of foray into entrepreneurship and building my business and building my practice. And then also the last job that I worked at was, for a very dear friend of mine who, and it was a small business. And so, even though it wasn't my business, it was still, growing a small business from one little studio into 2 locations and, 20 employees. And so
Gotcha.
kind of going in at like the ground level and helping it build up. So it's kind of like, it just seemed like a natural progression to, and I had so much freedom in that job to be myself and to create, a lot of the culture and, and provide, my kind of energy to it all. And I realized that like, I can't go back to working for somebody else after that, and I had that freedom because I was working for a dear friend of mine, and I just knew that I couldn't take a step backwards from that. And it's always been a dream of mine to have my own thing, and my own business. So it just kind of seemed like the universe was saying, now is the time. And I love listening.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love the fact that, you talked about in your story that, you could have just gone the like regular business consulting route.
Which I tried, I did.
But what gets me is the fact that you were able to pull in literally all of your passions and turn it into what you're doing right now.
Yeah. I think, that's the power of having a coach.
Yeah.
And I think it honestly, without her support, it probably would have taken me years to get to that point but I'm also a big proponent of like almost the path of least resistance when it comes to what we're doing in our lives. Like if it's hard and it's a struggle and we're like frustrated and it's difficult, like why are we doing that to ourselves? So like, when I was starting this consultancy, I was just trying to stay in my comfort zone. I was thinking, I'll just keep doing what I was doing at my last job and just somebody else will pay me to do it now.
Yeah.
And it was very much in my little box comfort, you know, and it was hard. Like creating content for social media was hard. It was hard to like come up with the packages that I wanted to sell. Like nothing about it really felt organic. You know, there are, I mean, small bits and pieces of it, of course, but you know, it just wasn't easy. And my business coach was very much like, who are you? What do you want to do? Who do you serve? What do you love? What lights you up? And so I started peeling that onion, and I'm like, yes, I love business and this is great. But I got my degree in child development and I taught, you know, children for 8 years. And, you know, I wanted to find a way to incorporate that. And then when I peeled the onion again, and I was like, well, I was a body worker, an energy worker for 6 years. Like, you know, I wanted to find a way to incorporate that. And then also just kind of looking at who am I right now in this moment? And I'm, you know, a trauma survivor. I'm an abuse survivor. I'm, you know, somebody who is healed from so many things, and I'm a mom, and I'm happy, you know, like even in the middle of all of this tumultuousness, I'm, you know, I'm find joy in all of the moments, because I've spent the last 20 years practicing mindfulness and working on my mindset and connecting to the universe and working on my intuition. And it's brought me to this moment of just, you know, clarity. And I wanted to just be able to share that, you know, and it's like you said, it's who I am, and it's everything that I've done and everything that I believe in. And, you know, it's so much easier.
I love that.
Fun, and the content is easy, and it's like I'm just sharing me and my life and my son and, you know, my family, and like the things that I love and the things that, you know, just come intuitively, and and it just, you know, it just feels right, and I want that for everybody.
That's awesome. That is, I think that's such a powerful story to anybody that's listening out there that might be feeling like stuck, or even somebody that's been an entrepreneur, for a seasoned entrepreneur that maybe has gone through several different phases. And I like what you said about who you are right now, because that's so important, because something that you were doing 2 or 3 years ago might not necessarily be serving the person that you are right now. You know, I can tell you, you know, we've talked, and I don't want the conversation to be centered around COVID, but like I was a different person. Like I don't want to say that sounds dramatic, but I literally feel like a different person than I was, you know, 4 months ago. I've gone through, you know, so much like soul searching, and the same with you is I'm really trying to focus on like what my intuition tells me, like listening to my gut, like just being careful about like setting boundaries and being aware of my energy and other people's energy. And, you know, I wasn't aware of that before. You know, and with everything going on, I was kind of forced to come into that. So I think that's really important for other entrepreneurs to notice as well, is that you're allowed to change. Like you're allowed to take notice of who you are right now and then build something around who you are right now.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when we remain open to that, life just gets more enjoyable, you know, because we're not, you know, so much of what we do as humans is we fight change, you know, and we fight the transformations that, you know, that the universe wants us to experience to become the people that we need to become. And the thing is, when we fight that change, the more we fight it, the more the universe pushes back. Like, no. Like, you need to make this change. And it just becomes this like, you know, that's when we start feeling unhappy, and that's when we start feeling depressed, and that's when we start feeling, you know, a lot of anxiety around things, is when we don't allow ourselves to, you know, to trust in those changes and to trust in our ability to, you know, navigate through them and come out the other side better. And I think that like this whole experience of the world right now is allowing for this paradigm shift to happen even more deeply, because it's happening to everybody. You know, and it's a collective shift. And that's why it's so much more powerful for each of us individually. Because like we said earlier, you know, we could feel the collective fear and the collective anxiety, but we can also feel the collective, transformations and the collective joy and the collective, ability to change and adapt. And so it's such a powerful, moment in time, these, next few years for us to be able to tap into that power.
Yeah.
And like you said, like, become aware of all of these things that maybe we weren't aware of before. So, I think for me in my life, the moment that I stopped fearing change and started actually seeking it out is when things really shifted for me,
Yeah. And I think that's so true. And, kind of as we wrap up here, I do want to talk about, because it's in your business name and I think more people need it. I want to talk about joy. And kind of in my own meditation today, I told myself, I am joyful. I am joyful. I am joyful. And I just kind of kept repeating that. And that's something, like, even for myself, that I have to still work on, because sometimes I have a bad day and I'm like, you know what, today sucks and I don't want to be happy about anything today. But what tips can you give our listeners on, like, how to practice joy?
Oh, yeah. So, obviously this is what I do for a living. So my first thing is going to say, get help, whether it's from a coach, a therapist, a mentor, a friend. You cannot do it alone. Nobody can do it alone.
Yeah.
But the thing that I want to say is that, like, joy and happiness and that feeling is that often we kind of look at it as this thing that we create or that we have to make. And the way that I see it is that joy is just an energy. It's just an energy, just like light and just like heat and just like sound. And it's just there. It's like in the world around us. It's at our fingertips. It's right there. It's just a matter of, are we here, mindful and open to it? Are we willing to open ourselves to that energy and receive it? Or do we believe we're worthy enough of it? Do we believe that, we deserve it? Do we believe that, it's ours for the taking? And, I think so often we decide that we'll be happy when, or we'll be joyful when, or, when I reach this milestone, I'll be super excited. And, it's good to have goals, but at the same time, like, even in the middle of a bad day, and we all have them, I have them too. If we can, joy is in the moment, right? Joy is not in the future and it's not in the past. And when we release all of those things and become mindful and allow ourselves to open up to the present moment, that's when joy can come in, and we can feel sadness and joy at the same time. We can feel anger and joy at the same time. There are many times that me and my husband will be like bitching about something and laughing, like, this fucking thing is it sucks so much, but like, what are you gonna do? It's not what, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And we feel all of those sadness and all that anger, and we can allow ourselves to feel those things, but they don't take away from the joy that's available to us. And I think, like, as a mom specifically, it's easy for me to tap into this because our children are, like, so close to source and are so joyful naturally. And so for parents, I always say, like, just play with your kids. The easiest and quickest way to tap into joy is to just drop everything and play. And so if you don't have kids, there's still other ways to do that. Like if you have pets or with your friends, or just put on some music and dance around the house, like dance around in your underwear, like playfulness is joy. So if you're ever, struggling to open up to it or to find it or to feel it, allow yourself the ability to play.
I love that.
Whatever that may look like for you.
That's great. And I think that's great advice, because not enough people take the time to play. It's hard. Like, it's not something that grown adults like, oh yeah, I'm going to go play today. But I think it's important to carve out time, for yourself, either to let that, like, to get creative. Because that's kind of what I do is I paint, and I'm not a painter, but I like to paint. Like that's how I get out my creativity juices. And I like what you said about you can be joyful with something else, because I don't think that people consider that. You know, they don't consider that they can have like both at the same time. Even for me, that was kind of like an aha moment with me. It's like, oh, I can still be joyful about having a bad day. Like I can still find the good in having a bad day. So I love that. I think that was a great tidbit.
It's just about, you know, yes, there is sadness and there's pain and the world is suffering, but you know, it's also lighthearted, you know? And so if we can create a little bit of lightheartedness around the sadness and things that we feel and realize that it's, you know, this too shall pass. I will be okay, you know, and I'm just going to let myself feel this and let it go.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things too is that we can always, I want people to know that like, if they're sad or they're angry or, you know, having a negative, you can hear my son in the background.
That's okay. This is real life. It's okay.
He's with his gamma playing. But you know, it's like, I don't have to, I can set boundaries around what I'm feeling, right? Yeah. If I'm sad, I can say like, okay, I'm sad. I'm going to, when my son goes to bed, I'm going to do these things to kind of help myself work through the sadness, but I'm going to stay in the moment right now and allow myself the joy right now. You know, like just because we feel sad doesn't mean we have to let it consume us.
I love that. I'm just cracking up.
He wants to make sure he's heard.
I love
that. Like we can create time and space for these feelings. We don't have to. They don't control us. We control them.
Yeah.
So you can create, you know, create a separate time for yourself to feel sadness or anger, and when that's right for you, and then allow yourself to also feel joy. So
that's perfect. I love that. Okay. And if our listeners want to either connect with you further or want to follow you on social media, where would they find you?
Yeah. So I'm going to speak into the microphone a little bit more here. You can find me mostly online at Facebook. On Facebook in my group, it's Joyful Boss Mamas. So that is where I'm every day sharing all my little tidbits and pieces of information and creating a community of women who are either seeking their joy or sharing their joy or, you know, supporting each other and finding their joy. So it's not just people who are looking for it. It's also people who want to share it with others.
Yeah.
So that's where you'll find me mostly at our Joyful Boss Mamas Facebook group. And then you can always email me at maggie@joyfulbossmamas.com.
Perfect.
Reach out to me directly.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Maggie, I really, really appreciate you coming on the show today. Technically, you're my second interview for the second season of Women Going Big. So I'm kind of dusting my rust off. That wasn't the right metaphor, but it just went really well. I'm really happy with our conversation today. And for everybody listening, I really appreciate you coming and listening to season 2 of Women Going Big. This episode will be on YouTube. It will be on the Anchor dashboard at Women Going Big. And then you can also find it on the website at womengoingbig.com. So thank you to everybody out there. And Maggie, thank you again for coming on the show. And you guys, we will chat later. I'm going to sign us off. Bye, guys.